Tonight, somewhere in the world, two people will find a quiet moment alone. A closed door, a private space, something that feels completely normal to you. Ancient humans had none of that. Not the door, not the room, not the concept of alone time as we know it. For most of human history, a group of 20 to 50 people lived, slept, and existed in the same space. All of them, all the time, together. So here's the question. How did ancient humans find a partner? Did strength actually matter? Did they feel jealousy? Did they fall in love? Did they even have privacy? The answers flip everything we think we know about attraction, relationships, and why humans love the way they do. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. Ancient humans had essentially zero privacy. Not because they didn't want it, but because the concept barely existed. A hunter-gatherer group typically consisted of 20 to 50 individuals. They moved together, slept together, and shared shelters. They ate together. They were almost never more than a few feet from another person. The idea of a private space, a bedroom, a door you could close, a moment completely away from other people didn't exist for most of human history. Anthropologist Christopher Ryan, who spent years studying ancient human behavior, found something that stopped him cold. In virtually every hunter-gatherer group ever studied, physical intimacy happened in the presence of others. Not as a performance, not by choice, simply because there was nowhere else to go. The reaction of the group? Almost universally, complete indifference. People turned away. They kept talking. They went about their business. Privacy wasn't something ancient humans had. It was something they didn't need because their community had no judgment around something as universal as reproduction. But here's what's fascinating. The lack of privacy didn't mean a lack of choice. Ancient humans were extraordinarily selective about who they paired with, just not in the ways we think. Forget looks, forget height, forget the shallow things modern culture tells you matter. The number one factor in ancient mate selection was simple smell. Specifically, a biological mechanism called MHC compatibility. MHC stands for Major Histocompatibility Complex. It's a set of genes that control your immune system, and humans can literally smell each other's MHC profile.
The research on this is extraordinary. In a famous study, women were asked to smell t-shirts worn by different men for 2 days, then rate which smell they found most attractive. Consistently, women chose the smell of men whose MHC genes were most different from their own. Why? Because a child born from two parents with different immune profiles has a stronger immune system. The body knows this math. It communicates directly through scent. Without a single conscious thought, ancient humans were running one of the most sophisticated compatibility tests in nature. But smell wasn't the only signal. Symmetry mattered enormously. Not because ancient humans had beauty standards, they didn't, but because physical symmetry is a direct signal of genetic health. A body that grew evenly indicates strong genes, good nutrition, and resistance to disease. Ancient humans could read this without knowing what they were reading. A symmetric face, evenly matched limbs, these weren't beauty ideals, they were health reports.
But here's what mattered more than either smell or symmetry: skill, provider ability, social status within the group. A man who was an excellent hunter who consistently brought food back to the group was extraordinarily attractive, not just because food was survival, but because it signaled something deeper. Intelligence, patience, planning ability, the capacity to provide not just today, but for years. And for men, the signals were different, but equally practical. Women who appeared healthy, energetic, capable of raising children. Women who were skilled at foraging, crafting, and social navigation within the group. These weren't superficial preferences. They were survival calculations dressed up as attraction. Now, here's the part that surprises people. Ancient humans felt jealousy. Not as a modern social construct, but as a biological drive so old it predates language. Evolutionary psychologist David Buss spent decades studying jealousy across 37 different cultures on every continent. His finding? Jealousy is universal. Every culture, every time period, every demographic studied experienced jealousy in response to the same basic threat:
a partner's attention going elsewhere.
Archaeological evidence supports this. Signs of mate-guarding behavior specifically designed to keep a partner from other potential mates appear in the earliest human records we have. But ancient jealousy operated differently than modern jealousy because the social structure was different. In a group of 30 people who all depend on each other to survive, you cannot afford to let jealousy destroy relationships. The person you're jealous of is also the person who will help you hunt tomorrow, who will help raise your children, whose help you need when you're sick. Ancient humans had to manage jealousy within a web of deep interdependence that modern humans simply don't have anymore. But did ancient humans actually commit to one person? This is where it gets really interesting. Pair bonding, choosing one specific partner and staying with them, is actually unusual in the animal kingdom. Of all mammals, only about 3 to 5% form lasting pair bonds. Humans are in that 3 to 5%, and the question scientists have debated for decades is why.
The leading theory involves children. Human babies are extraordinarily helpless compared to every other species. A human infant requires years of intensive care before it can do anything independently. A mother caring for a helpless infant cannot also hunt, cannot fully protect herself, cannot gather enough food alone. She needs help. The theory is that pair bonding evolved specifically because of how helpless human children are. A committed partner who stayed, who hunted, who protected dramatically increased the survival odds of both mother and child. Love, in other words, may have evolved not as a feeling, but as a survival strategy, and then became a feeling because the strategy worked. But not every ancient group operated this way. In several cultures studied by anthropologists, particularly in South America, there exists a concept called partible paternity. The belief that a child can have more than one father, that multiple men who contributed to a pregnancy all share in raising the child. This isn't mythology, it's a functional social system, and in communities that practice it, each man invests in the child. The child ends up with multiple protectors, multiple providers, multiple people invested in its survival. Anthropologists found that children with more than one acknowledged father had significantly higher survival rates than children with only one. Ancient humans didn't all have the same relationship structure. They experimented. They adapted to what worked. The concept of one man, one woman forever, that came much later.
So where did marriage actually come from? Not from love, not from religion, not from romantic ideals, from property. Around 10,000 years ago, humans began farming. For the first time, land had value. Accumulated wealth could be passed down, and for wealth to be passed down, you needed to know who your children were. Marriage emerged primarily as a system for establishing paternity and controlling inheritance. A man needed to know which children were his before he died and left them everything. This is not a romantic origin story, but it is the actual one. The rituals, the ceremonies, the social recognition, all of it built around a fundamentally economic problem that agriculture created. And then something interesting happened. Humans, being humans, took this economic institution and filled it with something it wasn't designed for. They put love in it. So here's what 300,000 years of human mating actually tells us. Ancient humans chose partners using signals so sophisticated that modern science is still figuring them out. They felt jealousy as powerfully as we do. They formed deep bonds, not because culture told them to, but because their children needed them to. They had no privacy. They had no doors. They had no concept of the perfect romantic setup. And yet somehow, in groups of 30 people sharing the same shelter under the same sky, humans figured out how to want each other, how to choose each other, how to stay. Not because a system told them to, but because the biology that built you, the same biology running in every person watching this, decided hundreds of thousands of years ago that some people were worth staying for. You didn't invent the way you love. You inherited it from people who had no privacy, no doors, no words for what they felt, just the fire and the person sitting next to them.